This is an explanation for my last video where I made 5 equal to 0 in the Java programming language. It was meant to be a meme and I wasn't really trying to explain what was actually happening, so I'll try to do that in this video. So first I said there were 2 types of integers in the Java programming language. In Java, there are actually 2 types of integers. One is a primitive and the other is a class. A primitive version, int, and a class version, integer. So this is just a value, so I could say int x equals 5 and integer x equals 7, for example. And then I can do whatever with these. I can do x plus y, and then I can just do anything with that. This basically means an int called x equals 5 and an integer called y, and it has the value of 7. So what's the difference between int and integer? Well, the int one is primitive, and a primitive just means a normal integer, a normal number. And this is what you would pretty much always use. But in Java, numbers aren't considered objects. So what is an object? Well, let's say I make a little piece of code here, which takes in an object, and then it shows it on the screen. This is how you show something on the screen. The system.out.println. So I could run that piece of code like this, and I could display any object. An object just means anything, pretty much. So I can give it some text like this. I can say hello YouTube, and it would show that. If I run this, I'll go ahead and say hello YouTube. So now what if I wanted to show a number? Well, that's where the problem is, because int is not an object. Pretty much anything else is an object, but primitives like int are not an object. So what Java does is when you do something like display 5, then it converts 5 from an int, which is the default, to an integer, so that it can actually be an object, because integer is the class version. A class is pretty much an object, same thing. So anyways, what Java does is turn the int 5 into an integer, which is an object. It's also 5. It has a value of 5, like this integer has a value of 7. So it converts it into an integer, which is an object, so we can give it to this piece of code so that I can display it on the screen. Now this is where the magic happens. I used a thing called reflection in Java, which basically lets me modify literally anything I want. So I used it to modify the integer cache. What is the integer cache? Well, converting an int. So if we have this line of code here, this calls our piece of code, which is down here. It runs this code, where it gives O a value of 5. So it's gonna display 5, but O has to be an object. So it converts the int to an object, which is integer. The object version of int is integer. So to do that, it actually takes a bit of time. It's a bit slow. So we don't want to do that each time we try to display. So instead, what Java does is it has a solution. Once the program starts, it converts a bunch of numbers, specifically from -128 to 127. It converts those ints to integers, and then it saves them. So now we have a bunch of objects just ready for the numbers -128 to 127. So whenever we convert an int, like over here, when we want to convert this 5 to an object, so we can run this and display it, then it actually looks in the cache first. The cache is what it stores them in. It converts a bunch of numbers, it stores them in something called a cache. So it looks there to see if it's between -128 and 127, then it knows it already converted that before, so it doesn't have to waste time converting it again. So it just uses that instead. And then what I can do is I can put some code at the beginning which uses reflection and turns the entire cache into zeros. So that means so it's gonna see this 5, it's gonna say, oh, 5, I already converted that, and it's gonna go to the cache, and it's gonna get its converted 5, and it's gonna think that's the 5, but it's actually a 0, because I changed it. Then it runs this, and it prints it, and it's gonna print out a 0. And that is how that works. That is how you trick Java into making everything equal to 0. I hope you at least understood something from my awful explanation. Thanks for watching. Bye.